All right, let's get started. Hey there. Have you ever wondered, is this enough? Am I enough? Same here. I'm Jessa Agilo, founder of ArtsPond. This is Enough, a series of casual, heart-to-heart talks about what's good enough in these tumultuous times. In episode 2, I would like to explore the evolving faces of research and the ways we are doing things are and aren't good enough for us anymore. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. My kittens are normally asleep at this time of day, and they are playing right behind me, and I can't stop them. So I apologize for any crashes or extra background noise that's not usual for this kind of thing. The second thing is I expected to be on screen with my video, but my camera decided to not work this morning, and I haven't been able to get it to work well. So I am off camera for today's stream. Okay, with those housekeeping notes aside, let's dive right in. I would like to acknowledge our funders for this stream and all of our other activities here at ArtsPond. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the support of Canada Council for the Arts, Ontario Arts Council, the Government of Ontario, the Government of Canada, the City of Toronto, Toronto Arts Council, and Agilo Arts. Before we get started, I would also like to acknowledge and honor the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples who have cared for this land, now called Canada, for countless generations. From our office in Tikaranto, we express gratitude for the opportunity to live and work on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Mississaugas of the Credit. These territories are part of Treaty 13 and the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Covenant, and are now home to many diverse Indigenous nations, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So today's conversation is about research and knowledge gathering, knowledge mobilization, insight gathering, impact practice, development, whatever language you would like to use. Artistic research is a term that is very commonly used and understood in the arts and culture sector, especially amongst artists. As an arts service organization, I have felt a great deal of anxiety and trepidation about doing research and calling the work that we do research. Because from a service point of view, I don't think there is the same understanding, trust, or acceptance of what research is, what it could and should be, in terms of being respectful and caring of the needs and wisdom and stories and protocols and expectations of diverse communities. So essentially, we are a research-centered organization because we need and want to have knowledge and wisdom and understanding of the stories and opportunities that are happening in the community. But we need to build the trust and the acceptance and the respectful commitment to reciprocity, both from our organization side and from the community side, before we can even start to think about what kind of research we want to do, what kinds of topics, what kinds of stories we want to explore in collaboration, in cahoots with community. So these questions have really started to drive the core of our work in asking, what is good enough for respectful approaches to research. I am thinking of social media. Most social media networks talk about how they are connecting communities. But in truth, they are actually market research firms that are using your stories, your family and friendship connections to research and gather information about markets and sell that information to others. And this is not something that I am very comfortable with. Increasingly, every aspect of society is becoming exploitative and extractive market research. There are sensors in our cars now that run 24 hours a day and track and record our conversations in the car, track every time we hit the brake pad, every time we accelerate. Every aspect of our life in the vehicle is being tracked. How can we develop approaches to learning about what the needs are of community and co-creating remedies and therapies with, by, and for communities at the edge? How can we do this in a way that is respectful and filled with commitments to building accountability, transparency, privacy, trust, and so on? So for the last 8 to 9 years or so, we're 10 years old this year, 11 years old. For the first 7 to 8 years, we've been really thinking about what research we can realistically do as a white-founded, disability-led, queer-led organization. What does trust look like? What does safety and comfort look like? What does happiness eventually look like? Can we get there in collaboration, in respect and care with diverse communities? So rather than pure research that is potentially extractive or possibly hard to understand, inaccessible, much academic research is very, thinks a lot about what care looks like in their research and try to acknowledge where all the sources of wisdom come from and not be extractive. But often that research is in language or in spaces that are not accessible to the average person. So we've been thinking about wisdom and what are the stages and accountabilities of building wisdom in collaboration with community. And there seems to be, to us, 5 stages: seeking knowledge and wisdom, sense-making knowledge and wisdom, shaping, stewarding, and sharing. Seeking for us is about listening to community, providing opportunities for community to explore their stories by being paid to do so, and within their comfort level, sharing back what they are thinking about their own stories. Sense making is then trying to place the stories that we are hearing, the stories that we are sharing ourselves, into a context, into a garden or a container that invites other people to bring their stories in and connect them, differentiate them, celebrate them in connection to other stories. And from there, where there is enough comfort and trust in sharing of that wisdom, we can begin to make connections, make sense of not just one story, but multitudes of stories in different topics and different communities. As we build trust with communities, we can then take a look at how that knowledge and wisdom is to be shaped and adopted or applied to new situations, to shape them or amplify them so that they can be better heard and seen and appreciated. Before you can actually share them externally, there is an important commitment for us to steward that wisdom, to make sure that everyone that is involved in the seeking, sense-making, and shaping stages of knowledge gathering and mobilization, that everyone that is involved, that is both alive and dead, is respected and acknowledged. And as long as there is a capacity to do so, because they are alive as opposed to passed away, that everyone is granted, is empowered with opportunities to decide how that information, that knowledge, those stories are shared, and how they are acknowledged, and how ownership and privacy and intellectual property concerns will be mitigated and supported and cared for once we come to the final stage of the wisdom well here of sharing publicly, sharing out to others in communities where there is permission to do so, or more publicly. So this approach has really informed all of our knowledge gathering activities. And we are trying to gather knowledge, gather wisdom, so that when we make an action, when we do something in collaboration with community, we have a foundation of understanding and a foundation of engagement with community to make sure that we are acting with, by, and for impacted communities in deep collaboration with them, not acting unilaterally, not acting without care, not acting without care. Want to make sure we are doing caring activities only. This approach here has informed our care plan for our second decade, which is called Well Springs. And there are 5 stages to what we are trying to accomplish. And they are very much applied to these 5 aspects of wisdom gathering. The first is seeking pathways as an organization that is a social innovation organization, trying to understand and illuminate passages to systemic justice in the arts and culture community. And we classify this as working in collaboration with people who are trying to shape the future of care, or care shapers. The next aspect is about service, sense making the services that are necessary in community, the essential services to meet basic needs for survival, safety, and comfort. How can we activate access to these essential services so that they are ready, impacted people are ready to step in and feel empowered, feel ready because their basic needs are met. They feel ready to take the hand, to take control of their own situations, to be a part of a larger ecosystem of change makers and caregivers. They have time, they have safety, they have a level of comfort that they may have not had yet in order to contribute to larger challenges and opportunities in the community. Shaping would then be about growing the versatility of community support so that once we get beyond basic needs being met, our larger needs towards moving to happiness or moving towards feelings of life meaning and wellness and well-being are sustained. We are not just thriving now, we are moving towards, or we're not just surviving, we are moving towards thriving. Maybe all of the challenges we are facing are not being met yet, but we are trying to shape what is available in terms of accessible and free volunteer-based support out in the community so that people in need have what they need. So I think of this as not working in collaboration with care seekers for the service sense-making side, but working in collaboration with caretakers. These would be intermediary type organizations, arts and not-for-profit organizations that are service or support oriented. How can we strengthen what we do in collaboration with caregivers, which is the next stage here under stewarding, in collaboration with impacted people? So stewarding is about renewing the social value and benefits of care with caregivers. So caregivers are those that have a level of comfort that allows them to think about not only their own survival and future dreams, but they are ready and willing and have the capacity to help and care for others. So a support organization that is worrying about shaping the future of wisdom and community would be the connection piece between caregivers and care seekers in the stewarding and sense-making area. So for us, we want to gather the wisdom and knowledge that is necessary to steward the future of care, of wisdom, of community. How do we support those caregivers that are making sure that all of our knowledge, wisdom, protocols, community practices are being honored and respected? The last piece is about sharing, and that is for us about social change, heartening the potential of social change with what we call not change makers, but care makers. And that is if social innovation, illuminating passages to systemic justice, is about the future, social change, heartening the potential of social change, is about the here and now. What are we doing now and in the next 2 or 3 years to make more opportunities for care, more opportunities for shared wisdom, to be accessible to people who don't have them currently? So this approach is really what we've been thinking about for the last 8 years or so, and it's starting to formalize now with other avenues, other ripples that connect back to this core well, which we call. This is a practice that we call our wisdom well. And all the other practices are building on top of this, digging deeper down into the ground, trying to find other avenues and more resources for water and well-being. So let's take a look at some of these other wells now, just as an introduction. So between that seeking for care shapers, and so in between, if we go back one slide here, in between the care makers social change piece and the care shapers social innovation piece is trying to understand heart, trying to understand the well of harms to our sense of self, safety, well-being. Things that hinder or annoy us. Examples, both positive and negative, of organizations, of individuals, of communities, of systems that are trying to hack the status quo and change them. Ideally for the better, but sometimes systems get hacked to make harm more accessible. So hack is that middle zone between negative and positive for us because it can be both. And then going from negative to positive, we have things that help us and things that harmonize communities together to make more care and stronger communities accessible. So once we, from a wisdom point of view, once we have a better understanding of the harms, the things that annoy us, how systems are being hacked, positive or otherwise, examples of things that have helped and harmonized communities, then we can start to think about what kind of activities we want to do or empower or lift up in the community to advance justice. So that's where the next well comes in. And as an organization, we have what we call 5 streams of justice that we are focused on. Spatial justice, socioeconomic justice. We haven't yet done very much about environmental justice, but it is our intent to focus on that more in this, our second decade. Disability and or accessibility justice, in cahoots with deaf, disabled, low income, and other precarious people. And digital justice. In between heart and justice, for us, we currently place one definition of many possible collaborations here, or connections, to care. So one well of care for us is our well with rights, respect, reconciliation, reparation, and reciprocity. So how can we approve efforts? How can approve efforts is completely wrong. How can we, apologies there, how can we work towards advancing rights in a way that is led with, by, and for communities that are deserving of justice? And once people have their rights fulfilled, we can go a next step beyond that and ensure that they are respected and understand what steps are needed to make that respect more available and accessible to everyone. As we go through rights and respect, often there are difficulties. And so the middle zone for us between the basic needs and the more positive future-facing needs is about reconciliation. It's a step forward, but sometimes it's also a step back in realizing the challenges that we have yet to face. So like hacking has a positive and a negative aspect, reconciliation for us can be in that middle zone where we're working towards reconciliation, but we do not have it yet. The other side here of the wells is reparation and reciprocity, and that's moving towards action. So once basic rights and respect and understanding of pathways to reconciliation are there, then we can offer reparations to address and compensate for harms and work towards not just respecting each other and supporting each other's rights, but being in reciprocal connection and care with each other. So this is just one well of care. There are others that we've been working on. Okay, so as we go around, if we go back to the previous slide, these two are about social change and social innovation. Let's look at service, support, and social purpose down at the bottom of the wisdom well here. So we can start with demand. Demand is on the service side. So if we go back to the original slide here, demand is on the service side. And it is demand for what? What care are we trying to offer therapies, remedies, solutions to? And on the worst case scenario, we're trying to respond to disasters, emergencies, crises. So the climate crisis, racism, the affordability crisis are outright disasters that are impacting people urgently and systemically in ways that are clear, in ways that we don't understand yet, depending on the crisis. So there is, okay, what kind of services would we offer in direct response to disasters? Deserts are infrastructure gaps, shortfalls, or when things were available and then lost. Dailies are those basic needs in order to survive. It's in that middle zone, positive and negative or neutral. Dailies are about those daily needs. And sometimes those are simple to do, and sometimes they're complicated to do. And then doulas and desires. Doulas would be examples of care doulas, where we've been accessing the care, the people that are giving care in the community, we've been able to access it. And then desires are our dreams for the future. We go over to the path. Well, what kind of groups or ecosystems are we concerned about with these demands in terms of service development? So there's people, individuals, there's populations or groups of people, and organizations. There are places, which might be virtual or tangible places. So this could be national parks, it could be virtual online marketplaces, all kinds of different spaces or places. Publics would be essentially communities, built up environments. And then the planet is our larger ecosystem or systems that are controlling how things work. In the middle of these two is, how do we activate belonging, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access? So when we develop services in response to disasters for populations, for groups of people, how can we activate belonging, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access for all the people we are in collaboration with or trying to lift up? The next one is, there's only 5 in the wells here, so I've repeated path. The next one is life. And there are 5 realms of life for us. There is in IRL, in real life. There's in virtual life or online life. There's natural life, dream life, and ancestral life. Thinking about 7 generations before and after us, for example, from an Indigenous point of view. So as we develop out services or offer care to different paths, we also try to think about the different realms of life. So are we offering care in online spaces only? Are we doing it in collaboration with people who are very concerned about our natural environment? Are we doing it in collaboration with those that are really invested in the legacies of their ancestors, both future and past? And in between these two realms is our grow well. And our grow well is essentially the ways we act in community, what we are trying to do. So the actions we are going to take that is built on the wisdom that we have been gathering together with community. And there are 5 approaches at the moment in this well: storytelling, building wisdom, cultivating, caring for ecosystems, building platforms, and making remedies or solutions more widely available. And we're going to talk about the Grow Well more in a future talk. But we're at time. So thanks very much for watching. Visit our website, blog. There is a recent blog article at the end of January 2025 that talks about all of this in a little bit more detail. I'm just going to leave you with a visual summary of these and other wells that have served as the starting point for our Wellsprings care plan for our second decade up until 2033. There's a lot to unpack in this visual diagram, but I hope the introduction that I've just shared to some of the wells, such as heart, justice, demand, path, and life, provide a little bit of an inkling into what is in here. So it's much clearer here how life, heart, justice, demand, and path connect to each other. And I shared some of those intersection points, such as activate, grow, and care, but there are others there to explore. So thanks for watching. I hope this has been enough for you to understand some of the things we're thinking about. We'll talk again soon.